The other topic we've been talking with clients a lot about, kind of moving away from retirement savings, is estate planning. And we've had a lot of clients reach out and say, I'm reviewing my estate plan, what makes sense? And it seems that one of the things that are kind of prompting this review at this time is the fact that we know that at the end of 2025, the current exemption amount is going to sunset. And what that means is right now you can pass a certain amount of money during your lifetime or at death tax-free. So you can give money away during your lifetime and or when you pass away through your estate, and that amount that you can give away before being subject to estate tax is currently $13.61 million, and times that by two if you're a married couple filing jointly. And to the extent that you give away assets either during your lifetime or at death in excess of that amount, then you become subject to estate tax, which currently is about 40% at the federal level. And then depending on where you live, states have different rules regarding that. And so if Congress doesn't act, because this is a tax legislation thing, the exemption amount will go down from that current $13.61 million to about $7 million per person. And so this potential reduction in that exemption amount is triggering people to look at their estate planning documents and make sure that they're written in such a way that accounts for potential changing legislation, and B, taking advantage of the current exemption amount if that's appropriate for their specific situation. There's more to estate planning, though, than just saving tax dollars. And I would argue for the vast majority of us, the big value in estate planning is really having the opportunity to express your wishes for what you want to have happen to yourself, your person, and your property when you're no longer able to act or speak for yourself. And so, Danny, can you talk a bit about, what is estate planning? Why do we have clients do it? I mean, certainly estate planning is up there with budgeting. It seems like it's the thing that clients really don't want to do. And we understand that. It's not necessarily thinking through the most happy thoughts, but what should clients be thinking about? What should they be doing, regardless really of tax?
Yeah, everyone should have estate planning documents. That's the first thing I want to emphasize. And if you work with me directly, I'm consistently harassing everyone about that. But it doesn't matter if you don't have children, if you maybe don't own real estate, you need to have estate planning documents. The biggest things, the first I kind of always go to is you need to have a will. A will is going to state what your wishes are if you were to pass away. So, you have assets that, where do you want them to go? You have children, how, who do you want to name as the guardian? All those sorts of things. From there, the next document that I always recommend is advanced healthcare directives, which basically you're stating your wishes if you were to become incapacitated or if you are at the end of your life. So life sustaining efforts, things like that. Those you can actually in most states find online and fill out yourself. You don't have to go through an estate planning attorney to do that. And what we recommend is fill those out, choose your agents, give your agent a copy, and also give your primary care physician a copy. And send us a copy if you want. So, your agent can come to us if they need it, likewise with all estate planning documents. The next documents that I really recommend are powers of attorneys. And there's kind of different flavors of powers of attorneys, but there's healthcare power of attorneys, which if you're incapacitated, someone being able to, make decisions on your behalf. And then there are financial powers of attorneys, which same situation, if you're incapacitated, that they can help others pay your bills or access bank accounts, things like that. It really is very common for at one point in your life that those documents are needed, and it may not be like at the end of your life. And so having those in place are really, really important. Another big thing that you'll hear about is trusts. And there again are tons of flavors of trusts. That doesn't necessarily, not everyone has to have a trust. The value of a trust in extension of a will is a will goes through probate court. And not everyone wants that to happen. A trust can override what the will says and can skip probate. So essentially, whatever you have in a trust document, you can clearly state your wishes. You can be very, very specific, and that will skip the probate process. For example, I personally do not have a trust. I have the other documents because I don't own real estate. And I have all of my accounts, all my investment accounts, all my checking accounts, everything. I have beneficiary designations or transfer and death designations, which will skip probate. So you can kind of talk with your advisor of like what makes sense for you. But then to kind of touch on that, if you do have these documents, please review them on a regular basis, at least once every 5 years. You would be shocked the things that we see either on beneficiary designations or estate planning documents. I have seen ex-spouses still listed as primary beneficiaries. I've seen strangers accidentally listed in estate planning documents. I've seen people, that are already passed away, or, you have that, you've named that sibling that you've now learned is horrible with money that you don't want to name. So just keep up to date on all of that information. And then always remember on beneficiary designations for retirement accounts, life insurance, review those. We are constantly going to be looking at the ones that you have listed with accounts that are under our management, but we can't necessarily see what you have listed on like your 401ks with your current employer, things like that. So regularly update those, and those will override anything that you say in your will or your trust. Whatever is listed as your beneficiary designation, that is what will happen. So just make sure you're double checking those. It's very important.
Thanks, Danny. I have a couple of observations I'd like to make. One is sort of factual, one's anecdotal. The first is estate planning can get complicated quite quickly. And we have been fortunate over the last decades to work with several excellent estate planning attorneys. Most often they are incredibly helpful, especially when events occur, whether it's someone who is no longer able to conduct their own affairs. Unfortunately, deaths do happen. Having that estate planning attorney in the loop is incredibly helpful. I'm going to just share anecdotally my own experience with my family, where my parents went from being able to run all of their own affairs to, by the end, I was running everything for them. The trust was an essential piece of that. And with all the assets in trust, it's a fairly simple matter when I was named as successor trustee for my dad to resign as trustee. I became trustee. It was a whole lot easier than taking a power of attorney and going to every bank and every place where he had assets and saying, okay, I am entitled to make this decision. The trust remained intact. The trustee just changed. It was a much smoother process for helping them through their end-of-life process. So I actually applaud the estate planning and attorney who put that all together and helped us through that process. Many of absolutely everything that Danny said makes sense. The healthcare directives are very important. That came into play as well anecdotally in my own situation with my parents, where having those documents at hand helped. I got on a plane to go to Arizona because of a medical emergency. And by the time I got there, the Albion team had sent the documents to the doctor at the hospital where my dad was. So thank you, Albion team. You did come through when we needed it. And having those documents on file at Albion in that moment is super helpful. We have subsequently, and actually prior to that time, done that for a number of our client families. So when we have access to those, we can just be the grease when and if these events occur. To summarize, estate planning attorneys can be extremely helpful. I have really valued the incredible value add that they have created for our clients, and simplifying the process. So as time marches on, whoever it is that's going to help those aging parents or friends, have them in position to be able to do that as seamlessly as possible is a really wonderful thing to do for your family.
Thanks, John. I think we've all had sort of personal experience with estate planning documents paying off, that we're so glad we had them in place, or that our family members had them in place. One note, part of what made John's parents' trust work seamlessly is that they titled their assets in the name of their trust. So that's a really key point. You can have a trust, but if you don't title your assets in the name of your trust, then they're not governed by the trust document, and it is not as seamless. So if you have questions about your own personal estate planning, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We aren't attorneys. As John said, we work with wonderful estate planning attorneys, but we can also be a sounding board or a first stop on your way to meeting with an attorney to update or draft initial documents.